start recording now so that, perfect. I have to get this first slide in the webinar and then we're going to move it to our second slide. If you are here for nutrition in substance use disorder recovery, you're in the right place. I'm so glad to have you. Lauren, do you want to advance the slide 1 for me? Perfect. All right, as you arrive, please share in the chat where you're from or where you are. And then also drop in the chat what your favorite snack is, because snacks are rad, and we're going to be talking a lot about food today, as you probably have guessed. And maybe what organization or agency you're from, if you feel comfortable, if you want to, that would be cool too. And we'll get started here at 12:02. I know y'all are probably eating lunch, which is great. So you may not have a free hand. I will put in here. Oh, cookies or chips. Yes, Sonia. I feel you. Penn State. Nice. Dark chocolate. Love it. Into jicama. Nice and crunchy, crispy, like a little jicama slaw, little jicama chips kind of deal. I love it. I've been on a grape kick. I love it. Popcorn. Yes. All right. We've got so many excellent people here. Love that. Any kind of baked good. Arwen. Yes. All snacks. Great. Love that y'all are chatty. Let's get right into things. Oh, we have Canada here. Is this for real? Did I just see that right? Wow. Oh my gosh. An international group. Amazing. Oh, Arkansas. Nice. I came here in August from OSU. I was on the Arkansas border. Glad to have you all here. My name is Susie. I am an extension educator here at U of M, and I focus primarily on nutrition, surprise, and have a little bit of a background in, not a little bit, have a background working in mental health and particularly in treatment centers, both with people who are struggling with substance use disorder as well as eating disorders. But a lot of my work now focuses on healthy food access here at the U. But I love this population, and I'm so glad to get to share a little bit about recovery with y'all today. Joining us is our fabulous webinar producer. Give it up for Lauren Backus. She's great. She knows all the Zoom things. I am inept. I try real hard, but I'm not the expert. She is. She's here to help us. She's gonna be helping us with the slides. She's gonna be helping monitor the chat, troubleshoot tech issues. And if you have any issues, you can feel free to message her directly, or you can throw it in the chat. She'll be keeping an eye on that for us. So glad y'all are here. And let's roll on into it, shall we? All right, so a few objectives for today. This is big picture. This is like 30,000 foot, 40,000 foot overview for some stuff for nutrition and substance use recovery. And we're gonna look at the way that substance use can impact nutritional status. We're gonna identify some ways that those in recovery can benefit from nutritional support, meaning, primarily what some specific things they might need are. We're gonna also learn some strategies on how to incorporate nutrition into the care of those in recovery. And I say this because we tend to have a mix of people in these webinars, particularly on this topic. We sometimes have treatment providers, we have community partners, and we have people who are here who maybe are a caregiver for a loved one that is struggling with substance use or is in recovery. And so try to keep things kind of broad and something that everybody can take something away from. So even if you're just more curious about substance use and nutrition, maybe not even in a care perspective or working with them, there'll be pieces that you can take away and just some like nutrition tips that I think the general public could kind of benefit from sometimes. We like to overcomplicate things, and I'm not about that. All right. So, quick discussion question. Again, let's maybe throw some ideas here in the chat. How might substance use impact nutrition? If y'all want to throw some stuff in the chat, that would be great. IBS, yes, lots of GI stuff can happen. That is for sure, Paige. I'm sure that y'all can already think of stuff. You already know things. All right, limited financial resources. Yes, nutrient absorption. Yeah, some maybe less than healthy choices for sure. All right, vitamin, nutrient. Yep. All right, great. Well, you all get A pluses. You don't even need to be here. This is great. This is great. I love it though. You guys are here. Oh yeah, moral fixation stuff. That's very true. All right, so for substance use and nutrition, I think first thing somebody said, one of the first things was this like shift in spending. Let's see. I don't know if I can control one. Oh, okay. They all came up at once. That's cool. Wouldn't be a Monday without me not knowing how my slides are going to show up. That's fine. All right. So y'all have already nailed a lot of these things. Shifts in spending. Overall, food intake generally tends to decrease during substance use, periods of substance use. And that's going to have an impact on literally every function in your body. It's going to impact our brain health. It's going to impact our immune system, hormones, metabolic things, all are going to be impacted. Again, hunger and metabolism is going to be impacted by not eating as much, but also can be impacted by different substances. So different substances are going to maybe have different impact on metabolism. You think about some substances tend to be appetite suppressants, whereas others might make you hungrier. And so there's going to be some changes in those. Somebody also mentioned IBS and gut permeability, nutrient absorption, very much impacted by substance use. When we talk about the gut biome and the microbiome, all those little friends that inhabit our guts that we know are really important, and we know some of them do certain things, but we're not quite sure how all of them interact, and still very much like kind of scratching the surface on how important those guys are for us. Those are all impacted by substance use and also by, lack of food. And also your actual GI tract itself becomes more permeable, particularly with alcohol use, and it impacts our body's ability to absorb the nutrients from what food is being eaten during that time. And then macro and micronutrient deficiencies are really common in people who use substances. Also, dehydration is really common as well. Also, this kind of is a good segue into when we're talking about, when people are kind of transitioning from substance use into recovery and some of the challenges that they're facing. Malnourishment has no body type. We're going to touch on that a little bit more in the next couple of slides, but it's really important that we are cognizant that we can't just look at somebody and know, what things they might be missing or how their substance use might have impacted their nutritional status. And again, this is like 30,000 foot overview on some very general ways that substance use disorder can impact nutritional status. Head on to the next one. So something that's really common in recovery and that can be really challenging for people is weight gain. It's fairly common in substance use recovery, and it can be little, it can be a lot. It just kind of varies person to person. Again, thinking back to using substances, if we stop using that substance that was acting as an appetite suppressant and suddenly appetite comes back, that it's going to increase, how much food we're eating, which can lead to weight gain. And metabolism might not rebound to what it was pre-substance use times. Again, we're not eating a lot of food for long periods of time. Our body gets used to working with less fuel. And so it starts kind of pulling away from some other functions in order to just maintain functioning on less fuel. And so then when we get back into recovery, start eating more food, body is still in that mode of like, whoa, well, we're not used to getting this much, but we know that it's sometimes the food is not consistent. So let's hold on to it. But there can also be medication related changes in appetite and metabolism in recovery. A lot of common treatments that are used in recovery, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, mood stabilizers, but also like medication assisted therapy can increase hunger and can have an impact on metabolism as well. Then we also got to think about treatment environments. Not all of them are very conducive to like physical activity. It can be a lot of kind of sitting around and, you know, not moving so much. And they don't always necessarily happen to be super like nutrition focused environments either. So thinking about the types of foods that are offered or being served. But also a lot of people in recovery are relying on super fast food options, or still may not be eating a ton because nutrition is really stressful. And there's a lot of like going from appointment to appointment to place to place to place, and a lot of juggling that's going on. And so that can also kind of impact food choices. Again, related to the stressors of maintaining recovery. But recovery, early recovery in particular, is not the time to start a diet. I know the weight gain can be really triggering for a lot of people and can be really distressing, but it's not the time to start a diet. Diets are physiologically stressful. They're also psychologically stressful. And we want to focus on, well, we'll get to what we want to focus on in a minute here. But I think we really also need to be cognizant that there's a lot of crossover between substance use disorder and eating disorders. There's a lot of similar risk factors and characteristics of both that make this group particularly vulnerable, and just something to be really aware of in recovery settings. Some of the similar risk factors and characteristics include things like genetics, large genetic component to both. There's these elements of cravings and kind of like they occupy a lot of brain space in this like rumination piece. They also are both kind of disorders that thrive on isolation and secrecy and are very, very isolating. Some studies have found that people who have substance use disorder are 11 times more likely to have eating disorders compared to the general population, which is like really astounding. Again, also why it's not the time to start thinking about weight loss. Thinking about weight loss, if there's a potential that somebody already has an eating disorder, is really, really dangerous. There are also high levels of sub-threshold eating disorder and disordered eating behaviors in this population to be aware of too. So maybe not quite enough to diagnostically meet criteria for an eating disorder, but still a lot of concerning food behaviors. Also need to throw in this note here too, that the research on eating disorders and body image in any population is disproportionately focused on women, not on men. So that's something to keep in mind. Like when we think about eating disorders and body image things, we tend to think primarily about women, but men absolutely struggle with this as well. And body image also is not just about weight. Tends to be, again, when we think about body image, we tend to just like automatically assume weight, but it can be related to anything. And it doesn't even have to be appearance related. Some people might struggle with, you know, scars related to their substance use or related to maybe like missing teeth, or those kinds of things can be really challenging for people too. If you are concerned about eating disorders or disordered eating, thinking about relationships with food in this population, highly recommend checking out NEDA, which is the National Eating Disorder Association. They have a lot of good free resources on eating disorders if you'd like to learn more about that. And now we're gonna take a little pause because that was already a lot. That was like 4 slides. I feel like there's already a lot of stuff that could be unpacked there. But I just want to take a minute, pause, check in, see how people are feeling. And then we can move on to kind of our next piece. I'm also going to grab some water. Okay. Also, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and throw them in the chat. So that way I can come back and see them later. Yeah, okay. Galen, that was like 4 slides in, but we're hanging in. We're doing okay. Get some emojis, some react emojis. How do we feel? I mean, it's not like super fun information. I know it's hard, but it is really important information. Okay. I'm gonna take a deep breath. I feel like I talk really fast when I do webinars. I'm sorry, y'all. On that note, nutrition is a marathon and not a sprint. And recovery is as well. You know, recovery and a healthy diet are these things that are like long-term processes. These are not, you know, something that is just like, oh, you do this thing and then you're done. It is continual. They take time. Recovery is something that is one day at a time, and sometimes minute by minute, because it can be really challenging. And I think nutrition is the same thing. We think a lot of times about like, oh, having this perfect diet, this ideal diet or whatever. But nutrition is more than just what you eat in a day, right? It's like over the course of a lifespan. And so I really like to try to encourage people that, you know, what happened while you were using substances, how you ate during that time is not like you have so much more time to make different choices, and like you're already making different choices now. So like, let's build on that. I know a lot of times discussions around food and recovery are like kind of narrowly focused on eat this, you know, don't eat that. And they can almost be kind of prescriptive, and that is not my approach. Number one, I'm a public health person. I'm not a clinician. So I'm always thinking like big, broader populations, but I also like to try and stay strengths-based. Like, here's what you're doing really well. Let's celebrate the small wins and the big wins, because if people respond better, I think, to positive reinforcement, and particularly in a population that is so isolated and already has a lot of stigma around their condition. I like to stay like, you're doing so great, because they are. Again, recovery is minute by minute. I also think it's important in recovery to think about what can we add instead of what can we take away, or what do we need to cut out. And that also kind of has to do with, you know, great, here's ways that we can sprinkle in some more nutrition. All right, so a couple things that we need to touch on. Substance use and cravings, really common. Oh, I might have skipped too far. Did I skip too far? Okay, yeah, here we are. So substance use and food cravings, really common. You'll see this particularly a lot in early recovery. People tend to use sweets as a way to curb substance cravings. The evidence is mixed on how useful that actually is. For some people, in taking, you know, having candy when they're having a craving for their specific substance can actually intensify the cravings later. And for some people, it's just not really helpful at all. And it's just like an added source of calories without a lot of nutrients. And so that's just kind of something to be mindful of. Comfort foods and emotional eating, nutrition, recovery is really stressful. It's super common to be craving those things and to want those foods as well. Sweets, cravings, high reward foods meaning like those salty things, those things that like really fire up that part of our brain that's like, yeah, that's good. Super common. And I think it's also important to note here that both substance cravings and those food cravings are going to decrease over time. They will decrease. And again, this is the time about thinking about ways that we can add nutrition instead of things that we need to take away. That's why we have cookies and gummy worms and pizzas on our slide with our fruits and veggies too, because all foods can fit into an overall healthy eating pattern. A couple other quick things to think about in recovery, though. There's a lot of relearning the body in recovery. There's a lot of having to tune back in with the body in ways that they haven't been in the past. Hunger cues, low blood sugar, cranky and nauseous and dizzy and sweaty and whatever, jittery from caffeine. A lot of those can also feel like substance cravings or crashes from substances. So it's really important that when we're thinking about nutrition for this population, that we're thinking about ways to kind of like stabilize blood sugar, thinking about ways to avoid those jitters or those crashes related to like caffeine, tuning back into the body. So being mindful of caffeine intake, less than 400 milligrams a day. Something I learned while doing research for this is that less than 400 milligrams of caffeine a day is recommended for everybody, but over that can actually have an impact on your microbiome as well. So just something to be thinking of, but also we got to think here too, there's a lot of other complex medical needs that could be happening in this population that might need more specific nutritional interventions to address. Being mindful of that, but also food access, food availability, access to and ability to prepare foods or store foods is going to vary person to person. For our unhoused friends who are in recovery, nutrition is going to be a particular struggle, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about some things that we need to be thinking of with nutrition. All right. Whew. What do we do? How are we feeling? I saw a chat somewhere. Where did it go? I think somebody threw something in the chat. I don't remember.
Susie, there was a comment in the chat.
Yes. No judgments around food. Absolutely. Love that. That is very true, Arwen. Not moralizing food choices, and especially, again, in a population that already has a lot of stigma, internalized and externalized stigma about this, about substance use disorder, adding more judgment onto like food choices and stuff is not the move. All right. What do we do? We're going to talk about some quick nutrition hacks that I think are just like good overall nutrition hacks for people in general, but in particular, when we're thinking about people who are in substance use recovery. Remember the previous slide, we talked about avoiding these like low blood sugar crashes, stabilizing blood sugar over the course of the day. A way to do that is by pairing some fiber with some protein, making sure that like carbs, if it's especially simple carbs, are paired with the protein source to help stabilize the release of that over time. Also building in frequent opportunities to eat, whether that's, just every 2 hours, making sure that you eat something, or if that's, you have 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, or however that looks person to person. The reason that eating frequently or having frequent opportunities to eat is important is because one, it helps avoid the unintentional crashes. Okay. If you're working with people who aren't back in tune with their hunger cues yet, they may not realize that they're hungry, and then they skip meals, and then they end up in this, cranky, hangry kind of stage, right? Can relate, have been there. So building in those frequent opportunities to eat is going to help avoid that. But it's also a way that we can, like, the more frequent opportunities you have to eat, the more frequent opportunities you have to sprinkle in some more nutrition, right? Like, the more opportunities you have, the more times that you have to introduce some more nutrients into your diet. A couple ways that we can do that is by pairing a nutrient dense item with a less nutrient dense item, just kind of like making that a rule of thumb, like, okay, I want to have some chips. I'm going to also have a piece of fruit with my chips. I want to have a Twinkie. I'm going to have, you know, some like nuts, or I'm going to have some cottage cheese with that too. Thinking about ways that we can pair both things. And again, thinking about how all foods fit. Nutrition is a long term, it's a big picture. It's not about just what you eat on that single day. Mixing in a nutrient dense item with maybe a less nutrient dense item is a really easy way to just kind of add those nutrients in throughout the day. Excuse me. Also, have kind of already touched on this with this population. There's a lot of like competing needs. Food can be really challenging. Thinking about embracing easy options. Hello, I make frozen chicken nuggets more frequently probably than I should as an adult, but they're easy, they're a quick source of protein, they're delicious. It's something I don't have to think about, but thinking about ways that I can pair those with, you know, maybe that's some frozen veggies or throwing it on a salad or whatever. Thinking about those kind of easy foods, utilizing like pre-made or convenience foods when necessary, because I would always rather have somebody eat something than not eat anything, is a big deal. Utilize that freezer, utilize that pantry. There's tons of shelf-stable items and freezer foods that are really nutritious. Frozen and canned vegetables are just as nutritious as fresh most of the time. Frozen can even be more nutritious because it's frozen right when it's picked. You know, it's not waiting and then going to the grocery store. Thinking about ways to utilize those. And again, like whoever said that in the chat, kind of like removing that judgment piece. Like there is no shame in using those convenience foods. Make your ramen noodles, throw some extra frozen veggies in it, throw an egg in it. Thinking about ways that we can add versus what do we need to take away. And also maybe making some simple swaps, whether that's, you know, swapping out your white bread for whole wheat for your sandwiches for lunch for the week, or trying a whole grain cereal instead of maybe your Captain Crunch or whatever, or mixing the two together. I do that. Thinking about ways we can increase overall nutrient content of the diet. And the last one, when in doubt, add a plant. It's a really like easy way to kind of boil things down and just say, okay, I'm not really sure what to do. What can I do? Add a plant, add some applesauce, add a clementine, take some grapes with you, add some snap peas, whatever it is. Easy way, add a plant. Okay, some nutrition resources for supporting recovery. My Plate is a really great place to start because a lot of people are kind of already familiar with the concept of My Plate. You know, we've got fruits and veg are half our plate. We've got our lean protein and our grains and dairy, or your dairy sub. Super easy, super accessible, tons of resources online about that. There's a lot of like really quick, easy recipes online as well. Also, SnapEd. Our SnapEd educators, y'all, I don't know if you've ever worked with them, but they're incredible. They are a wealth of knowledge. They know so much. They offer classes for all kinds of stuff. They're great. You can also check out Real Life Good Food. which is another resource. And there's also some really good research, new research coming out about the efficacy of pairing cooking classes with nutrition education for this population as a way to build skills in cooking, build some self-efficacy, and also build this knowledge base around food and what kinds of foods are, to be eating, that kind of thing. And I think they showed, I think it was out of the University of Tennessee, that did this specific program that I'm thinking of, like increase in fruit and vegetable consumption, some really promising stuff. I think it's great. And everybody needs to learn how to cook, right? All right. We also have to think too that like food is not just fuel and it's not just about nutrients. And I know I'm talking about nutrition and substance use recovery, but food is also connection. It's so important for us as people. Substance use is a disorder of isolation. It is so incredibly isolating. And again, so stigmatized. And food is a really great connector. It's a great way to bring people together. A great, like social support is so necessary for recovery in general. Utilizing food in that way, if you're a treatment provider or in that kind of setting, like shared meals, shared cooking experiences, like making pizzas together, doing something interactive with food is a really great way to bridge that gap. Also, food is cultural. There's so much significance to food and reconnecting with family, reconnecting with the community, connecting spiritual, reconnecting with yourself. So really embracing cultural foods, foods of cultural significance, as well as comfort foods. Again, because nutrition is not just about, and food's not just about the nutrient content, but also the historical, it's the feelings, it's, you maybe grandma isn't here to see you in your recovery, but you can remake her recipes or connect with her in that way. So maintaining that connection with food as more than just food itself. Also, food doesn't always have to be about eating. Thinking about things like gardening or growing your own herbs in your window, whatever that looks like, reconnecting with food in that way can be really powerful. Gardening is also like a great physical activity and meditative, and there's lots of like benefits to that. But also like visiting the farmers market and seeing like what's going on in your community, what's growing in your community, what things are available there. Super important as well. Okay. All right. So if you are like a provider, a treatment provider, or in some other way providing care for people in substance use recovery, think about working with a registered dietitian if possible to be able to run, and a provider to be able to run labs and identify specific nutrient deficiencies, because you can't tell by looking at somebody. It can be really important to get some of those nailed down because not all of them can be addressed by diet alone. So making sure that we're getting appropriate care for those. Actively screening for eating disorders and disordered eating in this population, really important. Thinking about adopting a culture of health, meaning making sure that like the way that the organization or the place is also supportive of health, whether that's having, some fruit options available as a snack during group alongside candy, having, unsweetened beverages alongside sugar sweetened beverages, those kinds of things. Thinking about participatory nutrition, because again, everybody needs to eat. Going back to that piece about food is connection, about more than just what you're putting in your mouth. Group meals, group cooking, non-eating food experiences, getting to be together in those ways. It's also a really good opportunity to model eating behaviors and, trying different things, connecting over food, building social skills and social connections, because those are things that they're going to need to be able to do outside treatment as well. Like outside the comfort, well, treatment center isn't really comfortable, but outside the treatment setting, being able to replicate those skills once they're out of there is important. There has also been some data to suggest that people that have like group meals together tend to eat more fruits and vegetables. And again, if we're thinking about ways that we can increase overall nutrients, building in some of those times to share meals together can be really important. And I think that applies, if you have a loved one that you're caring for who's in recovery, making sure to sit down and have a meal together can be really important for not just the nutrition component, but also for that social and that connective piece. Okay, I got done a little bit faster than I thought. So I'm going to unskip a slide and I'm going to go back a slide and show y'all a couple of, meal ideas. Oh no, I unskipped it, but now I can't see it. Lauren, are you able to show slide 19? I think it's because I unskipped it, but you're the one presenting. Okay, cool. So I wanted to show y'all a couple of just like easy, healthy meal ideas that could come from, a pantry, fridge or freezer, just some things to kind of get the wheels turning about what those might look like. And also because not everybody is going to have the same level of access to fresh foods, to even to frozen foods or cooking abilities, access to kitchens and that kind of thing. Something like some oatmeal with some nut butter and some dried fruit. You're getting some whole grains, you're getting protein. Dried fruit counts, especially unsweetened dried fruit, counts towards your fruit intake for the day. Lunch, doing some like canned tuna, whole wheat crackers, unsweetened applesauce. The amount of applesauce I eat, out of control because it's so easy. It's so easy, it's right there. And it can be really portable too, which is great. And again, even like canned tuna and crackers and applesauce, such a portable meal. Doesn't require refrigeration, can be thrown in a backpack and taken from appointment to appointment and eaten when it's convenient for that person. Rice and beans plus like another canned vegetable or a frozen vegetable, canned soup, and having like a whole wheat sandwich can be a really helpful dinner. Fridge or freezer ideas like breakfast, doing a fruit smoothie with some protein powder. The thing with smoothies that can be a little bit tricky is if you're not adding something that is high in protein like Greek yogurt or protein powder, the blended fruit can it doesn't take away the fiber. That's not accurate, but it makes it faster to digest for some people, and they can end up feeling kind of shaky if they don't have that paired with a protein source, a high protein source. Could do something like some whole wheat toast with that as well to get maybe some more fiber. Doing a frozen waffle and a hard-boiled egg in the morning. Man, bagged salad kits are so expensive. I'm not gonna lie, especially if you get like the chopped ones and they've got all the little goodies in it. If you maybe split that into 2 or 3 meals or use it as a side, but adding some frozen chicken strips or some chicken nuggets, about that life. Doing some leftover rice, veggies and eggs, maybe making fried rice with some leftovers, thinking about ways to cook once and eat twice, 2 or 3 times. Dinner, some of those like frozen bag meals, adding some extra frozen veggies into those to stretch that further, or doing something like some rotisserie chicken and some pasta. There's tons of really easy ways to add more nutrients while keeping things easy. And I think there's going to be some webinars coming up to the rest of the season talking about that. So make sure that you check those out. Okay. That's what I have for you. Are there questions before I head into closing slides? Questions? comments, concerns, please let me know. You can throw them in the chat, or you can unmute and share if you want to. That's totally fine. Practical. Thank you, Sonia. Right. We don't have questions. You can also, like I said, throw stuff in the chat, or you can message me directly, however you want to do that. Oh, Laura has a hand raised.
I just thought it'd be easier to unmute if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I work at a treatment center for youth and young women. And so we see a lot of concurrent disorder between like the substance use and eating disorder. But I think one of the things that we have the most kind of challenge with is just like the misinformation out there. Like everything's all like, well, I saw on TikTok that avocados have fat in them and that's bad. And so like, how do you have like, other than like the evidence, like that's not true, do you have any kind of suggestions for like working with the youth of how to kind of provide more accurate information?
Oh man, isn't that like the $1 million question? Yeah, that's really hard, because part of the challenge, like having worked at a couple of like residential centers with youth in particular, there's the like trendy piece and wanting to appeal to that. I think encouraging them to follow evidence-based people can be a really kind of great way to counterbalance some of those things. And that is going to kind of require a bit of legwork to pull some of those together. Like, hey, I know you really enjoy social media. Here are some accounts that I follow that are, evidence-based, and they make sure that they're bringing, science. Yeah, point them to, yes, exactly. Like directing them to those resources that are evidence-based and that are on those platforms, because they do exist. But it can be really hard to battle against the tide of misinformation. Let's see. Thank you for that question. I don't know if that like really answers that, but hopefully. Okay, so also we had a question about getting credit for U of M classes. Is this for, Galen, is this for the wellness points, or is this for like an actual class? So I know that there are some people doing both. The objectives are on the first slide, and I can get you copies of those though, if you want.
Galen, I don't think we can hear you.
Okay.
Can you
In the meantime,
type an answer, Galen?
okay. In the meantime, I'm gonna also, sober partner on prescribed Adderall seems to have, okay, so I'm gonna pretend like I didn't see that first part, but somebody having no hunger cues, convincing somebody to eat when they're past the hangry point. This is really hard, and I think that kind of comes back to that, like just making sure, like scheduling in that time to eat consistently, whether that is like putting a reminder on the phone, like, hey, have a snack or whatever, but also relying on those foods that are consistently, like, I want to say consistently palatable, because sometimes it's hard, right? Like nothing sounds good to eat, and lack of appetite, that like desire to eat stuff, really common. And so then we have to think about what things are just going to be easy, utilizing easy foods like smoothies, bulking those up with some like protein powder, or like I said, like Greek yogurt or whatever, to increase protein content. You're getting lots of nutrients and vitamins from the fruit and that kind of thing. But that's really hard when there's no appetite. But once they get to the hangry part, it's like, man, got to put something in our bodies. Sometimes I know there's like, ironically, there's somebody that I follow and she does this thing where she goes off of like what texture, temperature, kind of flavor profile does sound appealing if she's not really able to like nail down, like not able to just spout something off the top of her head about like what she wants to eat. It's like craving something that is crunchy, cold, fresh, and sour. And that might be like a crispy salad with, you know, some citrus dressing or whatever. So sometimes maybe going back to like what textures would be more appealing to eat, that kind of thing. Yes, also very true. Okay. If y'all would please, yes, there'll be a follow-up with slides and all of that. So Galen, you should be able to get those. If you would please fill out this short eval that Lauren is going to pop a link to in the chat at the end of the webinar, which is now, that would be great. I have got a couple more slides to just show y'all as we finish things up. This really helps us. We do have a few more webinars coming up. I know I'm going to be working on a couple with one of my colleagues, Nikki, on mindful eating and intuitive eating, as well as some information about popular diets and what's kind of fact and fiction. So Lauren, that might be something that you are interested in, kind of based off of your questions. So you can sign up for those at those links. Lauren's also going to pop in the chat a link to look at all of the upcoming family development webinars, as well as all of the extension webinars. And then engage with us. Find us on social media. Find us on social media and follow us on social media. There we go. And you can, that's it. Oh, Kate. Thank you so much for being here, Paige. All right. Okay, so I know, Kate, that you sent me a private message, but do you care if I answer it for the rest of the group? Because it might be kind of useful. Okay. So Kate works with some people in county jail for those with substance use, and there's like a nutrition service, but people are still hungry after getting their plates, and so they end up purchasing kind of, you know, stuff from the canteen or commissary. I think this kind of goes back to that piece about like all foods fit, and in particular in recovery, there's a lot of brain activity and a lot of like bodily systems that are kind of coming back online and are having to work in ways that they haven't like worked in a while. And so that's going to require just like a lot of food. But also if we're having cravings for certain stuff too, and that maybe does mean those less healthy items, that just kind of is what it is. I hate to be like, it is what it is. But I think it's really hard to tell people, again, this idea of like, what do we need to take out? Thinking about what can we add? If they're already getting fairly nutritious meals, but then they're snacking on stuff too from the commissary, that to me is I think it's just kind of part of the process, kind of part of the recovery process. But I think we can also always encourage people to try different things, or to try, you know, getting, I don't know what kind of food options are offered at commissary. So that's also hard for me to make a recommendation on like what things to encourage instead of, or, you know, to pair alongside their commissary choices. So I feel like that wasn't really a great answer for you, Kate, but that would be something. Actually, University of Nevada, Reno has what's called Healthy Steps to Freedom, which is a curriculum that we have taught, and it was actually developed for women in substance use recovery in the jail setting. I don't know why I didn't think about that like right off the top of my brain, because it's Monday, I guess. We'll go with that. I'm gonna pop a link to that in the chat, because that might be helpful to everybody to learn more about that program. It's really great. We've worked with them with our rural opioid technical assistance grant. That program focuses a lot on the body image piece, as well as some like food and cooking stuff too. But it is 12:51. Please make sure that you fill out your evals. That's super helpful for us. Sometimes parents who are in recovery struggle with meal. Yes. Feeding multiple people is already a challenge, but then you throw on top of that being in recovery and finances and all these different things going on. That is so hard. And Galen, you said you're with Head Start, right? So that is like it's like another layer on top of everything else. It can be really challenging. Yeah, that's hard. I don't know if you had any other questions, but again, I think a lot of it is part of the reason that I tried to make those things really like simple, like how can you add a fruit? How can we think about adding more nutrients without necessarily thinking strictly about things to take away or maintaining some kind of like perfect eating pattern or whatever. But yeah, having the little kids in there, that's like a whole other ballpark. Oh, I can't hear you, but I saw this, which is like, I don't know what to do. It's really hard because it is. It's so challenging. But all right, well, y'all are free to keep putting stuff in the chat if you have any questions or whatever. That's great. Otherwise, we will start closing up shop here. Thank you so much for your